This is Growth Guide, a podcast exploring the depths of curiosity, questioning everything in the name of growth. I'm your host, Brian D'Alessandro. My guest today is Jim Gale, the founder of Food Forest Abundance. Jim has a simple belief. If we control our food, we control our freedom. And the way to do so is much simpler than we might think. Fun fact, do you know that the largest and most destructive monoculture crop is not soy, it's not corn, it's grass? And there's a wild history around how we were duped into believing that it was a good idea to turn our fertile, food-yielding land into a patch of green that we spend much of our time and money just to keep manicured. We'll get into that and so much more. Jim's catalyzing a movement to convert as many existing lawns and denatured farmland into diverse, plentiful, and easy-to-maintain food forests. By providing customers with designs, education, and community resources, he's helping feed one community at a time. Jim operates Galt's Landing, which he calls a Freedom Food Academy. Wherever Jim is growing, he utilizes the wisdom of nature by replicating naturally occurring biological and botanical advantages. These completely eliminate the need for poisons and pesticides and are permanent fixtures that scale to any size and are adaptable to any climate, and have plentiful annual yields. On top of that, they are low to no maintenance, which is the big misnomer that if we're going to grow food, we're going to be a slave to the garden. It does not need to be the case, and food forests answer so many of those issues. It's Jim's goal to eradicate the majority of health issues like heart disease and all the likes of through a clean food and water supply. On this episode, we cover key principles and design systems for food forests, community resilience, shedding unhealthy narratives, and so much more. Let's get to it. Jim, man, good to see your face. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here, Brian. We're going to explore some pretty cool solutions today.
Yeah, obviously the work you're doing at Food Forest Abundance is near and dear to my heart and for so many people, whether or not they know it yet. Today, we're going to really aim to break down some old mental constructs that we've been fed and really open up people's worlds to what's possible here. So can you start by giving us a lay of the land, show us the forest from the trees, so to speak?
I love it. Well, I love your use of the word fed, that we've been fed. It's so true. We've been programmed to believe a whole bunch of lies. And one of the most insidious lies comes from a strategy that Henry Kissinger spoke about 50 years ago when he said, if you want to control people, control food. Now, why would anybody talk about controlling people? Well, he was the head of the Council of Foreign Relations. He's the man who appointed Klaus Schwab to the WEF. So what we have experienced for many generations is a tactic of war: control food, control people. And everything we've learned in our colleges and universities at Texas A&M and all of these other big institutions about growing food is a lie. It's a strategy and a tactic of control. Monocultures and the use of poisons and synthetics and chemicals are part of the strategy of control. So the first thing that we must do to win this war is to create awareness around not only the problem, but more importantly, what is the solution? And that's what we're going to talk about in great detail today, Brian.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, we have grown so disconnected from our food supply. And when we stop and think about it, the grocery store has only existed, 200 years, if even? Before that, food was coming from the community. It was being grown, and we were in direct contact with the earth and with the food supply. We've come so far in being disconnected in such a short period. So let's unpack some of that.
For sure. So here's the truth. I'm sitting in the truth of what nature can provide for us, which is epic abundance. And when we have epic abundance, we don't have scarcity. And scarcity creates fear, which is a tool for recruitment for war. So I'm in a food forest. A food forest is a natural system that mimics what nature can do. It's like the Garden of Eden idea. This here is a Jamaican cherry tree, also called a strawberry tree. Over here is a mulberry tree. Now, I brought my daughter and her friend out this morning. I don't know if you could see that, but there are thousands and thousands of mulberries on this tree. And we just picked two big cupfuls this morning, right? And then there's sweet potatoes and papaya and mango, avocados and bananas. There's actually 240 different types of edible and medicinal plants growing all around me. So all I have to do when I want food is walk outside, and within 10 minutes, I can have enough food to feed my whole family. And I'm not a farmer.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say, because again, back to the narrative that and just the education that we've been given about agriculture is that you have to be a farmer, or if you're going to be a gardener, you're beholden to it. And there's almost this enslavement to it. It feels a lot of times in that construct. But what you're talking about is something that is self-regulating to a large degree. Can you help open us up to this new way of thinking about things?
Yes, I sure can. So if we left this system, by the way, 2 years ago, there was nothing here but sand. This was a flat bed of Florida sugar sand. And we used the permaculture design ethics and principles. The ethics are very simple. It's voluntarism. It's earth care, people care, and voluntary share. I'm going to finish eating that mulberry. And then the principles, there's 12 principles, like catch and store water and use the edges and take feedback and make adjustments. And there's these 12 incredible principles. And when we apply those principles, mimicking natural solutions, then we can create edible landscapes everywhere, which literally solve all of the world's biggest problems. And I'm going to name them. Mass extinction. That's a pretty big one. Deforestation, cancer, diabetes, and heart disease, hunger, scarcity, and tyranny, among all the rest. When we simply take the poisons out of our landscapes and we use nature to solve our problems, we win on every conceivable level. I just want to add one more thing, buddy. So I could walk away for 30 years now. I don't have to do anything more to this landscape. If we walked away and came back 30 years from now, this system would be a jungle of mature food-producing trees and bushes.
It's interesting, as you're talking, it makes me realize, look, these are all systemic narratives. And so you can easily apply the same things we're learning from agriculture to the pharmaceutical industry, to the educational industry, to the political. All of it applies on a systemic level. And so it's always so fascinating there. Wow, look at those bananas. And so whether it be the narrative that we've given about being enslaved to have to grow food, or even take care of our lawns. And I know we're going to get into lawns, because the next thing I was going to say is we also have this idea that we need massive amounts of land in order to make this happen. And I know you have a very simple solution, regardless of where people are living. Can you open us up to that as well, please?
Yes, I sure can. So we have now designed permaculture landscapes in backyards in about 54 countries where we've helped people with the process, and every U.S. state. So when I show people this landscape, they say, oh, I live in Minnesota, or I live in Arizona, or I live in the deserts of Jordan. This cannot be done where I live. Yes, it can. The difference is you're not going to have banana trees in Minnesota, but there are thousands of edible plants and these are perennial plants. And this is a big distinction. Farming is typically about annual plants. An annual plant is a plant that you plant the seed, you reap the harvest, and then you gather seeds, and then you plant next year's seeds at the right time. Well, with what the controllers want to do is they want to control all seed, and the GMO seeds, you can't even replant them. It's insane what's going on.
This episode is brought to you by Zero Shoes, barefoot-inspired minimalist shoes with a natural fit and feel that supports natural motion. All right, guys, so I've dealt with knee pains and foot issues pretty much my whole life. I could never run more than a mile because of it. I always just wrote it off and said, all right, I'm just a sprinter. But the reality was there were underlying issues. And I was using things like orthotics. When I went to the doctors, they brought up surgery as an option, which I knew was ludicrous. So I tried a bunch of different things. I did physical therapy. I worked through building up my arches with yoga. And while some of these things helped, nothing allowed me to run until about a year and a half ago, where I listened to a buddy of mine who always wore barefoot shoes, and I tried a pair of Zero shoes. These are zero drop shoes, which means the sole is much thinner and it allows you to have much more flexibility and contact with the earth, but also they have a wide toe box, which allow your feet to open back up into their natural form. What we don't realize is with traditional shoes, we're binding our feet to the point where after a year and a half, I can't wear any of my old shoes because when I do, my feet are so bound and blistered. Since switching to Zeros, I'm running 2 to 5 miles comfortably about 3 to 4 times a week. So I definitely want to share it with you guys. Check out Zero Shoes. Huge fan.
So the point of this is permaculture is a set of ethics and principles that works everywhere. And it's just a matter of using the landscape and the zone, the agricultural zone, in a proper way with perennial edible landscapes. And so in Minnesota, one of the functions is how do you store food, which, by the way, is really easy to do. You can either dehydrate it or can it or put it in a root cellar. And there's other ways too, with salts and different things. So it can be done everywhere, my friends.
Yeah, a lot of the old wisdom that's coming back. And it makes me realize how much with monoculture, mono farming, it is that exercise of control of saying, we want to plug this thing in, make it do what we want for this period, and then it's expendable and we're going to do it again and again and again. Sounds pretty similar to what we see in our workforce, where all of a sudden it's the individual who has to fight for themselves to thrive, rather than what you're talking about. We're going to find the collaborators and that are naturally equipped to thrive in this environment, and we're going to get them in the place to play together, and that allows abundance for everyone. But it's such a diametrically opposed concept to the I, me, my adversarial relationship.
You know, when you say it, it reminds me of a meme I seen one time of heaven and hell. There were people in heaven and there are people in hell, and they had these 6-foot long spoons and their arms were only 3 feet long. And in hell, everybody was starving. In heaven, everybody was feeding each other. Everybody in hell was starving because they were only trying to feed themselves and they couldn't get the spoons in their mouths, right? This system creates so much abundance that we are using the abundance to help serve ourselves, our friends, our families, and our communities. And we have assembled a council of 12 world changers. And these folks have demonstrated the solution for decades, most of them. People like Marjorie Wildcraft and Lisa Mollison and Joel Salatin and Theo Fleury and Pat Miletich and just this incredible group of people. And we are following Martin Luther King's advice. He said, those who love peace must learn to organize as well as those who love war. And the truth of the matter is, if we organize 3% as well as the warmongers, we win because we have truth and we have abundance and nature, which some people call God's design, on our side.
And transparency, communication, collaboration, all of these things that are fortifying connection versus separation. And this brings me to this point, and we've spoken about this before, that this is the great lie. This great lie is that we are at it alone. We are independent individuals. There's a lot of talk about fears of, the next world war. And here's how I see it. I think the great world war of our times started decades ago. Except it's not one on independence. It's one on interdependence. And our interdependence has been under attack for so long, where we're trying to be told and taught that we are not an interdependent species, that are a part of this planet as one whole. And so when we come back to that truth and we reconnect ourselves to each other, again, like you said, you don't need to grow everything. You have such an abundance. You could focus on something your land is rich for, while across town you have someone who's doing something entirely different. And that's where you start this exchange. And that also builds resilience.
Yes, it completely. And there's something infinitely powerful, I would say divinely powerful, about standing in faith and courage and demonstrating abundance. And here's what I mean by that. We've built, we're in process of building 11 homes. In fact, 8 of them are finished. 3 are still under construction. We started about 16 months ago with construction. We have publicly declared, and I will do so again right now on your show here, Brian, we are free. I am a free man. I am no longer a slave to the programming of the opposite of live, right? Evil. We did not ask for permission to do any of this, to build any of our homes. We are openly, publicly saying that we're doing it better. So here's what happened. About a month ago now, I got a call from one of my partners here on the land. He said, Jim, there's a county guy here with a badge on asking for permits for these houses. And my heart started beating, and I took a deep breath. I've been anticipating this conversation for about 16 months. I took a deep breath. I turned my camera on my phone, and I walked up to this fella, and I introduced myself. And I said, my name is Jim Gale. He said his name. And I said, who gave you permission to be on our land? It's posted. Implied consent is not granted. This is private property. And he said, nobody. And if you want me to leave, I will. But I liked the way the guy said that. He didn't say that in an aggressive, authoritarian tone. He said that like a man talking to a man. And so I said, okay, well, that might be a good idea, but I would like to ask you a few questions and share with you what we're doing first to see if there's alignment. He said, okay, great. I said, what your government will allow us to do is use Roundup and glyphosate and to poison and kill everything. In fact, your government even subsidizes and uses these poisons at the county level to kill things. I said, we don't do that, and we will not do that. We want to invite you to participate with us, and we're not going to participate with you. And what we're going to do is we're going to help this community be free and healthy. We're going to grow food. We're going to create starts. We're going to plant seeds. In fact, we just planted a food forest at the local school, and we're helping people be free. And I asked him, do you know that the food supply chain is in jeopardy and we are at war? And you know what he said? He said, yes, I know that. He left with tears in his eyes as a full supporter of what we are doing. And he said, the county, or at least me, I will never bother you again.
Mm. Wow. Total goosebumps there.
Yeah, me too.
And you said it, that he was just a guy talking to a guy, that human aspect. Again, can we find a point of connection to start rather than just being in the adversarial relationship? And so much of our underlying currency and rhetoric is about that these days. Another thing I've spoken about on the show before is the metaphors and analogies and examples that we use. So many of them are war-based versus nature-based, that are truly grounded in the natural laws rather than the ones written by men who want to dominate and control. And when we start to return to that truth of being a part of nature, it can't help but touch us deeply, because we all know it to be true. That's the other part. I think everyone knows it.
Yes. It's innate. It's who we are. We are part of the divine, right? And God is omnipotent and omnipresent. There's nothing that isn't part of the wellspring of life, the frequency, energy, vibration, the foundation of wellness and abundance. And what these evil folks around the world are trying to do, like you said earlier, is they're trying to get us disconnected from the realization that we are part of this system, that we are part of God's system, part of the divine natural system. And when we simply become aware of that and stand with the armor of God, which is faith and courage, in defiance or very practical and logical sedition, which is simply self-reliance, simply saying, I'm not doing this anymore. I am going to not comply with you. Instead, I'm going to do good stuff. And when you do that on camera and invite the people to have a debate about it, they don't want any part of that debate because they know that they can't win that debate.
Brute force training is my go-to for high-quality, durable workout gear. From sandbags and sandbells to rucksacks and weighted vests, these guys are consistently innovating and improving to make their gear work even better. They're vet-owned, so they know a thing or two about being battle-tested. Crafted in the USA to withstand the most grueling workouts, I grab the sandbag when I go on family walks, or I use it in high-intensity interval training to get a killer full-body workout while only needing one piece of gear. I also travel with my sandbag. I just empty it out, folds up, and then when I get there, I fill it up and I'm good to go. Brute force is doing a lot of work around unstable load training, which when combined with breath work and a mindful practice, it supports healthy regulation of your central nervous system. In normal speak, that means you're able to be more effectively navigating the challenges that life throws at you. Check out their full line of gear at bruteforcetraining.com/growth to get 10% off. Now, for the people out there that are new to a lot of these concepts and really just opening up to this journey of returning back to that connection to source, to nature, and to that abundance, what can you offer as some tools and ways to start that journey?
So that's what my last 2 decades of my life has been about. Asking the question, how do we win the war? How do we catalyze a shift that leads to mass adoption of taking the poisons out and growing food instead of lawns, or growing food instead of monocultures that are poison-free food instead of poisonous food? And so we've created a series of strategies and tactics. The first piece is design. So everything starts with the intention, and then the next step is design. It's like building a house. The first thing you want to do is you say, I want to build a house on this piece of property. Great. Then you go to an architect, unless you are one, and you get a design for the house. Well, that's what we've created, is an international design team of some of the world's most prolific and successful designers. In fact, Bill Mollison was the founder of permaculture, and he passed away about 6-7 years ago. And his wife, Lisa Mollison, is one of our Earth Council members, and she has all of the Permaculture Institute's assets. Joel Salatin, another one who has shown the world how farming with cows and pigs and chickens can be done in a way that actually is regenerative and builds soil. And so for all those people who believe in the carbon footprint narrative that carbon is somehow evil, the fact that we have far less carbon in our atmosphere right now, while we'll have less life on Earth than we did thousands of years ago, and the fact that the soil is the best carbon sink there is, watch Joel Salatin's TED Talk. He destroys the whole narrative. So what we've done is we've started from the ground up and from the top down. I love re-engineering or reverse engineering from the ultimate ideal. The ultimate ideal that I can imagine is the Garden of Eden everywhere, is food forests on 50% of the 50 million acres of lawn, and on 100% of the 890 million acres of farmland that is currently being destroyed. When we have that much food, we could feed 20 billion people. The overpopulation narrative is one of the fundamental lies of our society.
Now, you talk about lawns, and as an American, lawns, that pristine, green, fresh cut lawn is baked into us as being as American as apple pie. And so this is a big one, right, to shift. So can we step back a little bit and talk about, And why don't we start with, I remember you told me what the number one monoculture crop was, and I was shocked.
Lawns. The number one monoculture that takes more poisons, more chemicals, more human resources, and does more damage than any other crop is the American lawn. We should be so proud of ourselves. Let's create awards so the person with the fakest looking yard can get the Yard of the Month award, right? It's all part of the strategy of insanity that goes all the way up to evil.
And it's so interesting, right? Because it's rooted in the medieval times aristocracy, where the French and the British, who were very affluent, would be able to employ dozens or even hundreds of people to care for large lawns, so that when someone pulled up on their horse to their estate, they saw this thing that, wow, if that could have been kept, this person was well off. And now it's become a symbol for Americans, but it's changed. It's been inverted, where it's like you have to be a slave to your lawn and use chemicals that are going to kill you, mess with nature, and you're going to spend so much of your time maintaining it to be a representation of what, really, when you look at
I know. It's a representation of enslavement and the death of our world. That's what the lawn represents. And I ask you this, is this more beautiful or less beautiful than a lawn? Look at all the colors. Look at all the life. Look at all the food coming in. And not only that, but this is far less maintenance. So not only is it more beautiful and more functional, and not only does this system solve all the world's biggest problems, but we don't have to work for food anymore. Food will literally be free. And when this type of system is employed, not only will food be free, but water will be harvested in the land and be stored in the landscape. And energy, this moringa tree right here, this is like a miracle. This has more vitamin C than an orange, more potassium than a banana, more calcium than milk, more protein than eggs by weight in the leaves of this tree. And it grows in sandy soil. There's medicine all around us. So this also solves all of the health problems. For the most part, it solves all of the problems.
And when you're talking about cleaning up the soil and removing toxins from it, which obviously there's phytoremediation and ways of doing that, where you're utilizing plants to do so with hemp and sunflower and whatever else. Yeah. But the whole point here is that you're not only going to be able to gather water, you're not only going to be able to grow and harvest your own medicine and food, you are doing it from a pristine, clean, non-toxic source, which is increasingly harder and harder to find there out in this world. And if you do, you're spending an arm and a leg to do so.
It's absolutely nuts. It's so insane. But the good news is people are waking up faster than ever. We are in the ascension of human consciousness, the apocalypse, the great reveal, the great awakening. All of these things are turning right now. And to be leading the way, demonstrating freedom on all of these levels, I couldn't be happier. Whenever I get any fiat, in fact, that's one of the things our Earth Council is doing, is we are composting the fiat. What does that mean? Well, fiat is our currency, which is backed by nothing, and it's in rapid decay. So anything that's in rapid decay is failing. Our dollar is failing. And what do we do with shit? We compost it, right? So in other words, this Jamaican cherry tree behind me, a year and a half ago, this was like a 3 foot tall, about as wide as my pinky. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but now it's getting ready to provide thousands and thousands of delicious fruit that my daughter thinks taste like cotton candy, but are much healthier than cotton candy, right? So this tree might have cost me $60 a year and a half ago. Within 2 years, I've got look at, this is a new tree that came out of this. This tree is worth 60, $80 right here. There's another one there. There's another one there. So this tree becomes a nursery that can create infinite more trees and infinite more food. So that's what we're doing. We're helping people become aware that the best place to put their fiat, which is decaying, is into natural systems and systems that provide food.
Mm. And multiply. And yeah, we have a place in upstate New York. And when we walk around, if we're trying to change something around, we'll walk around and we say we're going shopping, and we look around and see what things have sprouted and relocate them. And yeah, it's a really cool way. So for people who don't have an acre or more of land, right? Say they have a small lawn, where do they start?
So you start with design. That's why the design is so valuable. It's such a great first step, because permaculture in a natural system, there's 7+ layers of food production, right? You've got the roots and tubers, which are like sweet potatoes and turmeric and ginger and a bunch more roots and tubers that are underground. So that's your underground layer. And then you've got your herbaceous layer, which is like, this is perennial peanut. This is also an edible flower, right? And it's like a living earth band-aid. So it'll cover the scar on the earth here, and it's very beautiful to walk on, and it's edible. So that's your herbaceous layer. Then you got your shorter shrubs like the cranberry hibiscus and your taller shrubs, and then your shorter fruit trees and your taller fruit trees and your vines. So in an area as big as this circle, you could have 3 to 4 overstory fruit and nut trees. You could have vines going up them. You could have sweet potatoes and gingers and turmerics and raspberries and blueberries and blackberries and grapes and passion fruit. You can have all of that in the area the size of that circle.
So there's really not much limitation of being able to start with what you have and where you're at. And obviously, depending on the climate you live in and what zone you are, those varieties would change, but those underlying concepts stay the same.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep.
So cool. And so you've been at this for a while. You said that you've been building these homes. Tell us more about the homes, what the intention is there, and where you're going from here.
So we're in St. Cloud, Florida, at a place called Galt's Landing, Galts Landing, after John Galt from Atlas Shrugged. And we are demonstrating freedom. We are having events constantly, all related to health and wellness and freedom. In fact, we just partnered with John Baxter, who's another Earth Council member, and we've got a healing center now stood up at Galt's with a hyperbaric chamber and his healing technology of the year, according to Bloomberg, and several other healing modalities. And we are inviting people here from everywhere. And in fact, Congressman Soto is coming on Monday. I met with Bobby Kennedy here. His team said he's coming. One of our team members on our council just got in touch with Trump. We're looking at, and by the way, I'd like to clarify, I do not count on these people to be good guys. I'm aware that they have histories and failures, and I'm aware of controlled opposition, and I'm aware of the deep state and all those things. I'm also aware that everybody can be inspired. And I'm also aware, more importantly, that it's in their best interest to get on board and to collaborate with the solutions, because that's the way it's going. And collaborating with anything else is just death. So my point with that is we are now reaching out to and being connected to some of the biggest influencers in the world, and we will achieve a shift in awareness that leads to mass adoption. It's actually happening at scale right now. And Brian, thank you very much, by the way, for having this message on your show to your audience, because everybody listening now, if you've listened this much, then you're aware that something's going on, and you're probably curious and you're looking for solutions. And we invite everybody to join us. And we don't have any patents or NDAs or none of that BS. We are here to collaborate, to organize, and bring about this shift together.
Now, it's easy to look at the output of doing all of this action and the results that come from it, the bounty that are harvested, right? But let's also look at what the benefits are for the individual as they're experiencing this work with nature, because we've also been so disconnected from that at large. Can you talk about that a bit?
I can. So I'll give you a real world example. Our monthly bills, our break even, was around 7,200 a month 3-4 months ago. We moved here to Galt's Landing on December 1st, and our monthly expenses now are under 2,500 a month because, well, one is we built a completely off-grid community. We have no energy bill, no water bill, no taxes. We don't pay taxes. We have our house paid for. So even if we didn't, it would still be probably a 30 or 40% savings per month. Our only bills now, we have a car payment of about 700 and some bucks a month, and we have internet, and then we go out and we travel and stuff like that. So our bills have been decreased massively. And here's the big one for me is I'm hyper aware that the system that runs the world right now called governmente, which is mind control, and it's really BlackRock. BlackRock runs the world. BlackRock controls everything. BlackRock is not only the name, it's the intention of the entity. So I'm aware that we could have a catastrophic systemic collapse of all these systems, including the food supply chain. And knowing that I have so much abundance around me for my family and our community, that helps a lot.
There's definitely talk in different circles around imminent downing of the grid system and having everything go offline. And if you play that out for just a short moment and you ask yourself, okay, who's going to be in a position where despite that unfolding, they're stable, they have an abundance of food, clean water, they have the resources of community, and they've already tried and tested the community for resilience so that they know it can work together. Because that's another thing. A lot of times we think, oh, we have some people that get along together. They're a strong community. Well, community doesn't start until things get hard. And if you don't practice for that and cultivate the ability to dig deep and respond positively when things get hard, you could be in for a very rude awakening. And so you look at these people and communities that are really well fit for it. Look at the Amish. If the energy grid went down, they would carry on as normal. They'd have some effects, I'm sure, but very little. And they've already got all of their systems in place for how they work together and make everything happen. And it sounds like what you're building has a lot of those same qualities.
Exactly right. And we're also aware that while we might have an abundance of food, if the grid goes down and our community is starving, then we do not have food security. So with that in mind, our first step after creating our own food self-reliance and energy and water is to help the community around us. So that's how we win this war, is local, self-reliant, regenerative communities. And these are now popping up all over the world. In fact, our ultimate kind of product is called the Freedom Farm Academy. A Freedom Farm Academy is basically an off-grid homestead that produces all of the food, water, and energy needed to thrive, along with the functions of education and demonstration. So we now have these systems going up all over the world, Africa and Asia and Canada, the United States, and we're looking for more everywhere, because every one of these will be a seed of abundance and a nursery that as times get tougher, these systems can supplant the current food supply chain.
There's such a beautiful inversion there of even if you are of service to self, in order to truly be secure, you help the others around you so they have an abundance where they don't need yours. There's such beautiful, ironic simplicity in that message. So even if you're still stuck in the I need enough for me and my family, and look, I mean, obviously we do need to make sure that we have ample supply, but if that programming is running so deep, know that the more you spread it to those around you, the less dependent anyone would have to be on you.
That's exactly right. When everybody eats, can you imagine the world that we will be living in? When I met with Bobby Kennedy, I shared with him, this is it's amazing how things are happening. Like there's something going on that Newtonian physics and Darwinism cannot describe. There's something much bigger happening right now. And I got this vision of a campaign strategy. And I worked with my partner, McKinley, and we put it on paper. And the campaign strategy was very simple. And I had pictures of Bobby Kennedy, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis. And so I created this campaign strategy. And when I sat down with Bobby, I said, Bobby, campaign strategy that I'm going to lay out for you right now will not only win you the election, but the campaign itself will change the world. And he went, what? Like, okay, let's hear it. And he kind of smirked like, yeah, oh, another one of these guys. By the time I was done, he agreed. And he was so inspired. And this is why I say everybody, no matter where they are, everybody can be inspired. And here it is, by the way. Here's the campaign strategy. Imagine a candidate for the highest office campaigning on slogans like, I'm going to take all of the poisons out of the school lunches and land. And the students are going to learn permaculture and they're going to grow some of their own food. And as a result of that, we will decrease and reverse the trends of childhood cancer and diabetes and disease and suicide and depression. That's a big deal. The news media would go crazy. And then what Bobby Kennedy could do, and imagine, by the way, he's standing at a school surrounded by kids putting food in the ground while he's making his speech. Well, this is not a hypothetical. It's been done all over the place. And every time kids are integrated with natural systems, they're healthier and happier. So every time kids are integrated with natural systems, like in other words, kids with gardening schools or outdoor classes, they're happier and healthier. This is not a hypothetical. And he could demonstrate that using the numbers. So there's 4 stops to this campaign. The other one is, it's Trump in this one. And he said, I'm going to reverse crime trends and we are going to decrease recidivism by 50% over the next 4 years. Well, what would the media do if Trump made that claim? They would go nuts. Here's the facts of the matter. When inmates participate in gardening programs, which has been done on multiple occasions, the recidivism rates fall by more than 60%. You just ended the majority of crime. So here's another one. This one I had DeSantis in the picture. And Ron DeSantis is in a city park. And he is people of different nationalities and colors and creeds and religions and backgrounds and cultures around him. And he is saying, we are going to create food security for everybody. And he's engaging the community to put food forests at local parks and on common area land. As a result of this, he reverses the poverty in all of the opportunity zones and slums in Florida. And by the way, the Florida state budget's over, I believe it's over 100 billion now, with 5% of the Florida state budget reallocated. So it's already being spent. So we're not talking about new crime of taxation. We're talking about simply allocating the current budget in a more logical way. 5% of 100 billion over 4 years is $20 billion. That's 20,000 $1 million food forest installations in the state of Florida in 4 years. That would solve all of Florida's biggest problems. Florida would become the happiest and healthiest and most free and food secure place in the world in a very short time.
Incredible. Well, I hope that that 5% can find its way there, because it's obviously such a no-brainer. And it just shows, again, how far off we are with our disconnect of where those massive budgets are going and just perpetuating the problem versus alleviating. But that's, again, back to these systemic issues that we're facing. We have a sick care system, not a healthcare system.
Yeah. And here's a fun one. We just did a proposal for the president of El Salvador. It's a design proposal starting at a very high level. And it's about exactly that. It's about permaculture in schools and prisons and slums in El Salvador because they don't grow all of their own food, but they sure should. They got an incredible climate and they have good soil and they have the people to do it. The interesting part about El Salvador is the president, I just learned this yesterday. They have now a new amendment to their constitution that takes out all of the poisons and focuses on regenerative agriculture.
Hmm.
Boom. Salvador is going to lead the way.
Yeah, and that's where you have these countries and these political offices that are making change that is so dramatic. I was traveling earlier in the year and I was in Aruba. And since they've got the Dutch influence, the major supermarket there is Dutch. And even in just this massive supermarket, you walk in there, and because it's all going through the EU, so many of those chemicals and toxins that are made illegal there, you're getting food that is at such a higher quality. And it's really important that we, as Americans, experience what that looks like somewhere else, whether it be going to the food stands and getting natural organic food, whether or not it's certified organic, and going to other countries when we travel and trying food that does not have the same chemicals in it, because the proof is in the pudding. You feel it in your body in so many ways. And the more we could get exposure to it, I think the better we are for it.
Oh gosh, I've never felt better in my life. I'm 54 years old and I am running around the tennis court like a 20-year-old. It's amazing on every level to live this way. And for all of those listening who don't think it's for them, that's the BS. That's the programmed belief system. This is for everybody because it makes sense. The only people that don't want this are either ignorant, which is I'm ignorant in a million ways. That's not an insult. It's just the reality. Or evil, or they want to continue to control. That's the key to this, is helping to help people see that this is for every single one of us. And it's a matter of coming together and organizing around this solution.
And it takes some courage too. I think in order for people to step into their power, especially if they're disconnected from it, and really take their health into their own hands, we've been pushed into the role of being sheep in a lot of ways. And so it's hard for many to acknowledge that. But look, on the other side of acknowledging it is changing it and stepping into our power. And here's the other catch. The kicker is, even if you start doing some of this, replacing some of your lawn and experimenting with it, even if you decide, you know what, I don't like eating that food, you will have made your health better just by getting your hands in soil, just by grounding yourself regularly on the earth, and just by being in that connection with nature. Yeah. So there's really nothing you could lose there.
Oh, you're so right. Grounding, I've just learned about the profound effects that are demonstrable. This is not some woo-woo science. It's absolutely proven. And anybody with one of these little monitors, the other day I was holding one of these systems and it showed like 250. That was the number on the machine. As soon as I put my feet on the ground without my shoes on, without the rubber stopping the flow of energy, zero. It went to zero. So now my body is actually transferring energy instead of holding that energy. Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That is so profound and so true. But the word think is misplaced. Don't think. If you want to experience the present and the divine and the wisdom of God, take a breath and feel the frequency, feel the energy, the vibration of the divine. And that's where all wisdom is.
There is some great science that's supporting this these days. I mean, I love also some of the stats of like beekeepers having longer life expectancy than the other people in their communities. And this is due to the vibrational frequency that the bees are vibrating at. I mean, really amazing stuff. There's long been science on the intelligence of plants and trees, but now we're seeing that they have the same photoreceptors that we do, but they have it throughout their whole plant body. And they're actually able to see a person that's walking by, and they could even see what color clothing that they're wearing. But it's time for us to reconsider what intelligence looks like and open up to this full spectrum of intelligence and wisdom, because these are our ancestors, the plants and the earth. There's so much wisdom to tap into. And when you start connecting with it, it guides you and it leads you. So just get started.
It's so beautiful. I love it, buddy.
It really is. It's a magical thing.
Awesome.
Jim, thanks so much for being on the show. Can you just tell us where to find more information?
I'd like to invite everybody to go to foodforestabundance.com, foodforestabundance.com, and we have free strategy sessions. So you could talk to a professional permaculture designer for 30 minutes at no cost. Our goal is to inspire you and empower you to be free, to grow food. And that's the first place to start. And also come visit me at Galt's Landing. The website is Galt's, Galts landing.farm here in St. Cloud, Florida.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate you.
Thanks, buddy. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for joining us this week on Growth Guide. A big thanks to our sponsors, Atmananda Yoga. You guys have got to check out their yoga alignment mat. I've been using this for a long time. As you know by now, I've studied and trained with them as a yoga teacher, and the mat is incredible to deepen your practice and to ensure a lifelong injury-free practice. Visit growthguide.love/alignment for more info or to buy. Be sure to use code GROWTH at checkout for 15% off. One of the perks of hosting your own podcast is that you could sponsor your own brand. On that note, this episode is sponsored by Spirit Squad. You tired of your Matrix standard issued uniform? Have you pulled the thread and need some new ones? This calls for some 5D level ascension gear, such as our 432 Hz classic hoodie and our Resist the Program Third Eye Kitty tee. Spirit Squad's got you covered. From ceremony gear to pre-ceremony gear, to post-ceremony gear. We have anti-ceremony gear too. Are you raising consciousness while little ones are raising hell? We have the perfect gear for drop-off, pickup, and serving in the 3-foot kingdom. While you're at it, Spirit Squad has mini sizes, like our Feral Child shirt, strong enough for your little, yet sends a message to the fearful and weak. Give this one some space. Grab your Spirit Squad gear now at spiritsquadsupply.com. And welcome to the rebellion. Make sure to visit our website, growthguide.love, where you can find freebies, exclusive content, and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. If you found value in listening, I'd really appreciate a rating on iTunes. I can't tell you just how important this is. Or spread the love. Tell your friends, your fam, heck, tell your spirit animals. And follow me on Instagram at growthguide.love.